All right. Good day, class. Welcome back, week 3. Hopefully everything is going well. If you have any questions or anything related to week 1 and 2, please feel free to reach out to me. In addition, don't forget about forming your groups this week for the upcoming case study or the group project that you have in week 5 or 6, I believe. So make sure you put together your groups and are ready to go. Okay. If not, then I will put the groups together, but I would rather you guys put the groups together and just one person from each group email me the group members. All right. Let's get this thing started. So today we're basically going to cover why sports research or research in sports and why it's important, and also trying to figure out how sports fits into the community and different sports organizations and that kind of thing. How we started the grassroots for the youth and public sports, and what's the place of sports within our infrastructure. Okay, so first thing, why do sports managers need to understand research, right? If you want to understand anything, you need to do research. You need to do, look up data, information, and that kind of thing, because it helps you make better decisions at the end of the day, right? We see many companies are driven by data, right? The collection of data is a big business, and that data is used to create a profile of each of us, right? Our behaviors, our spending behaviors, our purchasing behaviors, our behaviors, so that companies can tailor their resources to specific things that they know that their consumers want and are looking to find. Okay, so same thing in sports, right? And there's two sides to it, right? There's the side that we do research in which we help the athletes, right, become better athletes by, researching different techniques and different approaches to different sports and physique, and trying to keep our physical bodies up, right? And then there's the research that the company will do or the organization will do as far as market research to figure out what the consumer, the people that are watching the sports and the fans, what they are trying to see and achieve, and what works and what doesn't work, right? And research, keeps you relevant. It keeps you on top of what's going on. That's why research is extremely important, because it really stays current with the newest trends or some, the ways that society is going, right? The direction that we're going, right? You can only get a real insight or perspective on, what direction we're going in by doing research. Right? So we have to gather information, right? Again, helps make decisions, develop strategies, enhance organizational operations, right? And this is across the board for any company, okay? Anything you're doing in life, right? Even if you're going to the store, you don't know where you're going, you research the route, okay? If you are looking for a particular pair of sneakers or some apparel or whatever the case may be, you may research different apparel companies. You may research different type of companies, a different type of apparel, the material, the price, right? That's all research, right? That's all going to help you make a decision as to what you're going to get, where you're going to get it, how much you're going to pay for it, how you're going to get it, right? Like, are you going to go buy it at the store? You're going to go online? What are you going to do, right? And so there's research on both sides of the fence, as I said, academic research and business research, okay? All right, here's some sports, companies or companies that are sports related or help with sports research. Excuse me, okay? Just so you have an idea, there's a few of them, but there's a couple out there, right? And even any sports agency that, that works with athletes, is going to have some level of research or research department in order to help the agents assess, the value of the athletes. Okay. from a statistical standpoint. Not, we're just looking at straight numbers sometimes when it comes to contracts. All right. And so companies that deal with, that have agents are going to have people inside that are analyzing the athletes and trying to determine their market value. All right. There's different types of research design. Okay. There's qualitative and qualitative data, and there's validity and reliability. And we'll jump into these things real quick. But this is more of a statistics class than it is a sports management class. But because statistics is at the core of research, it's important that you understand these different things, right? And we talk about quantitative and qualitative data. We're referring to quantitative as numerical, could be measured, right? And is what we're used to seeing. Qualitative is when it's more of categorical, or it's more descriptive, or it's like I like to say, it's more squishy in nature. Okay, we're more or less trying to draw out patterns and ideas based on more of a person focused or individual focused type approach, right? We're talking to people, we're having focus groups, we're asking questions, and we are trying to see if there are any patterns or buckets or trends, that are apparent as we talk to different groups of people and try to ascertain what it is that is happening, right? Quantitative is a little different. We'll use a survey or that kind of thing, right? You can also have mixed methods, and we'll get into that. Validity and reliability, two concepts that are very important in statistics, especially when we talk about instruments, or if we're talking not instruments as it's playing, more or less the survey, right? Questionnaire. That's the technical name for it. Is an instrument, okay? And so that's just another name for survey. When we talk about validity, it refers to whether the instrument is valid, and does it test what it's supposed to test. Okay, is it valid? Is it does it, so if I have an instrument, right, and I'm trying to get an assessment as to how baseball players, how pitching may, affect their elbow or something like that, or their, their shoulder or their elbow, right? But then the questionnaire I asked them, has questions about basketball or football, right? That's not necessarily a valid test, okay? Because I'm not getting to the core of what I'm really trying to get to, because the questions are not appropriate for the sport or for the topic, right? So you have to make sure that the questionnaire or whatever method used is valid and it's reliable. Reliable more or less refers to that you get the same results over and over again, as long as there's no new information or no new trend that has occurred, right? And so let's just say, for example, I give you a test on Monday. It's the first day of class. I give you a test on Monday, and you come back Tuesday, and I haven't taught anything, and then I give you the test again on Tuesday when you come back to class. More than likely, you should get the same score, okay? Because the material is the same. Nothing has changed as far as you gaining more information, more knowledge. And so you should end up with approximately the same score, right? So that lets me know that the test is reliable, because it's going to give me the same results over and over again. As the more I repeat it, the more likely I'm going to get the same results, because nothing new has been introduced to the participant or to the situation, okay? All right. All right. So, we're looking at research design. There's a couple of things you want to look at, right? And try to figure out what design works for me, okay? You gotta look at the purpose of the research and the research questions, right? The expertise of the research and available resources, and how the research will be used, right? Those are all important factors in figuring out, how do I, collect my data, right? How do I analyze my data once I get it? Now, for you guys, for the most part, at this level, you're not going to, you may take basic element, basic statistics class, maybe. I'm not even sure that that's required at the undergraduate level for a sports management degree. But um, as you get into your master's and your doctorate, you would definitely have a statistics class. Because it's really a requirement for most disciplines, if not all disciplines, across the board. Right, statistics is a daily part of our life, and it's very unusual that most students don't have to take a statistics class. Okay, but how we figure out which design to use with research design excuse me, depends on those factors. Okay, so we have a couple of different research designs. Experimental is what maybe a lot of people are used to seeing. Okay, so experimental basically refers to something in the lab, a controlled environment, right, where I'm influencing the environment. Okay, just like we see a lot of times in a lot of research and development or art, what we call R&D departments, right? They'll be doing experiments. Okay, whether they be mice or rats or dogs or monkeys, human testing, right? We're doing experiments, and that's typically what people are used to hearing and seeing and understanding about research, right? So an experiment, basically has, the independent variable, dependent variables, and then you have your outcomes, okay? And so we're trying to see what impact does the independent variable have on the dependent variable, right? What's the outcome, right? And so we'll run an experiment, right? But the key about the experiment is that we're controlling. It's in a controlled environment. We have a control group, we have an experimental group where people, we also have the placebos and some other things, some other characteristics of experiments. Okay. Cross-sectional refers to doing research at a point in time. Okay. At a point in time. And so let's just say, for instance, I want to do research on the, impact of, equipment in lacrosse or something like that, right? So I'll just go and I'll ask certain series of questions, but when I ask the questions, it's specifically that the data will only apply to, from that point in time and back, not forward, sort of. Okay. So cross-sectional is just, you know, um, basically one point in time. Time series is different. Time series is now I'm collecting data at different points of time, right? I'm collecting data. I'm doing my research based on time hacks. Okay. Uh, every 2 weeks, I'm collecting research. Every 2 weeks, I'm doing something that is, part of my data collection, and I'm looking at it, and I'm just saying, okay, I'm collecting data at certain periods of time, right? That's the time series type research design. Right? Longitudinal is more of a long-term study. Okay, more or less, hey, this question may be, this does going to kindergarten have an impact on whether or not, people, do well in high school? Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start looking at people or kids that are going to kindergarten, and I'm going to track them all the way till they get ready to go to high school. Okay. Or I'll track them periodically, right? I'll say, okay, these kids that went to kindergarten, this kids did not go to kindergarten. And then from time to time, I'll go look and see how they're doing. And then when it comes to uh, the end of their high school years, then I'm going to look at how they did, right? And compare that to, basically it'll be the kids that went to kindergarten, the kids that didn't go to kindergarten, and how did they do in high school, okay? But it's over a long period of time. It's over 18 years or whatever the case may be, okay? Ethnography, we're looking at different, cultures and kind of background and more or less how people are living, and that kind of thing, right? We're not more or less, but like almost observational in a sense. Um, so, we're looking at how people behave in you know in their natural setting. Okay, it's really a better way to state that. Okay, so yeah, so looking at the kind of the customs and courtesies, or the kind of looking at how people live, right, and how they do things, and compared to other groups of people. Okay, then you have your case study, of course, which we look at is more of a recall analysis of you know um, analysis of things that have already occurred. Okay, so we do a case study so we can figure out what are the things that were done right, or the things that were done wrong. Do an analysis of a case, right? You have to do a case study this particular session in our class, right? And so the case study will be an examination of some situation that already occurred. All right, so we kind of talk about that. All right, so quantitative and qualitative, as I said before, quantitative data is numbers, qualitative data is words, pictures, actions. Mixed methods, you can use both qualitative and qualitative in your research approach if you want. Okay, um, and all three are used, right? Qualitative, quantitative, and mixed methods when we're in sports management research. It really just depends on what it is you're looking for, how much time you have, how in depth you really want to be with your research, right? Because qualitative data is going to give you very, somewhat superficial numbers, but they'll be very accurate and they'll be easy to understand and very straightforward, right? And it's supported by data, right? Qualitative is a little different. Qualitative is a little deeper, a little richer data, because you're getting it from the people themselves, and it's not about a rating. It's more or less about them talking about how they feel and how it impacts them, and you start to see a pattern in how things affect people. Okay. All right, so some features of quality research, right? And the way research works, you need to have kind of your problem statement. Okay, what is the issue that we're looking at? All right, in general, like overall, the big picture. What is that we're looking at? What is our problem statement? Okay, and then from there, we'll kind of look at what is the purpose really of of our research. Okay, and then from those two things we'll derive our research questions. Okay, we'll figure out, like, okay, what questions should I ask to kind of get to the core of the bigger problem. Okay, and in that we will also determine our hypotheses. Right, what do we think is going to happen, right? So we may have a research question that says, again, does throwing 100 pitches a season or whatever have an impact on the pitcher's elbow or shoulder or something to that effect, right? And then your hypothesis will be whether or not, yes, I think that it does, or no, it doesn't. Okay, so you have to pick a side. Okay, when it comes to your hypothesis. All right, but you have to make sure that when you think about your research questions, that they are based on, or there's some conceptual or theoretical foundation for them to rely upon. Okay, there's nothing wrong with thinking about something new, and if it's really novel and it's new, it's innovative, then that's great. But for the most part, most things are already kind of out there, right? There's a concept or theory out there for whatever you're thinking about. You maybe just be thinking about different aspects of it. Right? But at the end of the day, you need to have some conceptual and theoretical foundation in which you can kind of thrust your research questions out there and have some support. They need to be rooted in something, okay? Something that makes sense, something that's already kind of been looked at. And there's, and it doesn't have to be specifically directly related to it. It could be a contributing factor, a contributing concept, or or theory. It doesn't have to be the primary thing. It could be a number of different concepts and theories that contribute to your particular problem. Okay, so remember that. Okay, all right. So validity, reliability, as mentioned before, validity assess how well our measures capture the meaning of an abstract concept. Reliability refers to the consistency and dependability of our measures. Okay, so as I said before, right, validity and reliability are two important aspects of research and are necessary. And your instrument or your survey, whatever it is that you use for, in quantitative research or mixed methods research, has to be valid and reliable, right? And that process is very lengthy in trying to make sure that your particular questionnaire or survey is valid and reliable. There's entry criteria, reliability and validity. There's criterion, reliability and validity. There's a couple different areas like subsets in which you have to kind of construct your instrument so that it makes sense, that it flows, that the concepts are grouped together, and they're not confusing to the participant. Okay? So when we do research and we want to get it published or want it to be, taken seriously, we have what we call the peer review process. And basically the peer review process is just the kind of the checks and balances sort of, okay, for research. So what happens is you do a piece of research and then you want to publish it. So depending on where you want to publish it, you send it to those people, to that publisher, to that, organization, and they will look at your research. And what they're trying to do is replicate your research based on what you've written. Okay. So based on what you've written and the procedures and the steps that you've taken, they're going to follow that and they should get the same results that you got. If they don't get the same results that you have, then something's wrong. Okay. And this is where the ethics of research come in. Okay. Because there are many ethical dilemmas that you're going to face when you're doing research. Okay. As far as to wanting the research to support what your hypothesis is. Okay. It's one thing to have research that, you have a certain question, a certain thought, right? And then it doesn't pan out that way. But in many instances, research, the way they fund it is via grants, right? Or via some kind of source of money. And so if I'm doing research, I have a research or overall topic that I can't show any real, substance to it, or I can't really show that this is a valid research question or something that actually is important, then I'm going to lose my funding, right? And so sometimes you'll have the researcher, fudge a few numbers or, say something that's not true, right? They will, tailor the results, or they'll leave something out that they found in the results, but they know will be detrimental to what they think about, the research should have said, right? And so the key here is to just follow the research, follow the data. Whatever the data says, you should adhere to that. Whether or not it supports your point or what you thought was going to happen is irrelevant. The key is to be honest and truthful, transparent, and be ethical in your research. Okay, because you may do a piece of research and fudge numbers here and change things here and omit things there, and then people are making decisions based on that. They're going to impact other people's lives. Okay, business decisions are going to be made off of this. Life decisions are going to be made off of this. So it's imperative that there's no real misconception about what you found in your research. And so the peer review process, make sure that you adhere to these ethical standards, and they want to make sure that before they publish your work, that you did it the right way and that your results are valid and true. And, the results you got can be used later on when other people are doing research also, okay? All right. So you got your, your critical thinking and sports management research, right? So there is a big preoccupation with sports statistics, right? And as I mentioned before, specifically when it comes to the athletes and, you know, trying to evaluate their value or their market value, okay? And so that's the one thing that you can look at um, to see like what value is this particular person worth to my team, okay? So there's different amount of statistics that you'll see watching a sports event, okay, that you may think is ridiculous, but they use all these analytics, and it's gotten worse in the past 5 or 10 years. They have so many different categories of sports statistics that they use to give the fans some perspective as to the efficiency and productivity of individuals and or the team. All right. So, next time you're watching a game, pay attention to all the statistics that are going on off and on, right? In football, team is converting, third downs 80% of the time. That's very, very high, right? So that tells me that I can count on that team, for a 3rd and 15 from the goal line. I know I can count on that team to probably more than likely 4 out of 5 times convert the third down and get, the first down to continue down the line, down the field. Okay. Free throws, LeBron James made 5 out of 10 free throws. That's 50%, right? What if he had made 8 out of 10 free throws? It'd been 80%. And so how did that impact the game? Right? How does LeBron's free throw shooting impact the game? What strategies would be used by the other team so that LeBron will be on the line more often because he's less likely to score on the line? Okay. Now, granted, I give something up with that as far as a foul, but if I know I foul LeBron, I don't let him score, and I get him to the foul line, he's a 50% free throw shooter. I know that I got a chance 50-50 either way that he's not going to make it. Okay. And so instead of making 2 points, maybe he make 1 point, right, on the free throw line. But that helps me devise my strategy because now I may just say, you know what? Don't let LeBron shoot. As soon as he gets the ball, you foul him. Okay. And so that I know that, okay, I'm sending LeBron to the line. It's a technique that they use with Shaquille O'Neal, Shaq, for those of you that don't know his full name. Okay. Where they call it hacker Shaq, right? They would just foul him because, they couldn't stop him in the paint. So we just foul him and send him to the line. But at sending to the line, Shaq wasn't a great free throw shooter. Okay. And so the chances were, the likelihood of him hitting his free throws, all of them were very, very low. Okay. And so if he sent to the line 10 times, he might go 3 out of 10, which is me as a defense or as the opposing, team. That's great. I would like that. Okay. So you got to make sure that, you got to pay attention to all the stats that are out there. And, there's some stats that are there that, don't really mean anything to us, but they're important to the organization because that helps them evaluate and assess the players. And also there's some statistics in there that are directly tied into the players' contracts, okay, that when they sign their contract, there's certain milestones they have to hit. And so it's important for them to understand, what are the stats as far as like, who are they playing with? What's maybe the quarterback's completion rates? How often do we run the ball? If I'm a running back and I want to reach a 1,000, rushing yards for the season, how often does the team run the ball? How many of the plays are run plays, right? Are we a run team? Are we a throwing team? Are we somewhere in the middle? That is all important because if I'm a running back and we're a throwing team, right? Our quarterback is more of a guy that throws the ball, and all our plays are really throwing plays, then it's probably gonna be harder for me to get to that 1,000 yard season. Okay. All right. So now general quality of research, right? You really want to make sure that you ask the hard questions when it comes to the research, right? How was the data collected? Where was the data collected, right? Is it primary or secondary data? Okay, when I'm talking about primary data, secondary data, I'm really referring to primary data is when you do it yourself. You collect the data yourself via your own instrument or your own means. Secondary is when using data that's already been collected for another particular research project or research topic, but applies to your your research topic. And so you use it as secondary data. But since you didn't collect it yourself, it's secondary data, and you have to really make sure you understand why they collected data and what was the purpose of the research. Okay. Uh, Social media in the Olympics, trying to figure out, how do we, kind of look at social media as a tool for research, right? Collecting likes or collecting hits and that kind of thing. Okay. The Olympics, especially, uses a lot of research to decide where the next Olympics will be. Okay. What sports should we now put into the Olympics? Okay. There's a lot of questions that the Olympics uses research for, okay, to answer and to kind of implement new policies and to see where things are going. Okay. So as I said before, the source of research and access to information, right, is key when you're talking about sports management research. Okay. A good example of this is when the presidential election of 2016. All right, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. Everybody thought Hillary was going to win by a landslide, and Donald Trump didn't have a chance, right? But the reason they thought that was because the way that they did the research on Hillary Clinton's side, it was not done well. Okay, the data was collected from a place where Hillary Clinton was already popular. Okay, she was already kind of favored in those particular areas. So if you're going to ask questions about Hillary, about her performance and what you think, are you going to vote for Hillary in an area where she's already pretty popular and already the main attraction, then you're going to get some skewed results, right? You have to be objective in your research, and you have to, when you collect the data, it has to be very diverse, right? It be varied, and it has to be random. Okay, and that's really the best approach to collecting research. Do a random selection or random data collection here. All right, and so there's different ways to collect your data. If you are looking at depending again on how what you're trying to achieve, the resources that you have, right? The systematic data collection is random. There's just a couple of different ones that you can use, but for the most part, we use random random selection, random data selection when we start doing our research, is because everybody has the same chance of getting selected. The selection is at random, and so no one's actually prepared to there's no predisposed or prearranged answers, right? What you're getting is the truth and straight up, because people don't necessarily know that they're going to be involved in it. All right. Okay. All right. So some of the questions about the future of sports management research, right? What kind of issues do we see coming down the line, right? How do you kind of look at the questions that you have, and collect the data, analyze the data, and then make decisions off of that? How are you going to kind of solve or remedy the things that the athletes want, the things that the fans want, right? As as compared to the resources you have available, because you can't do everything. You can't fix every issue. So when you do research, it helps you to figure out what are the important things that you can fix or help in or remedy, right? And where should we put our resources, right? Where should we put our money, right? And so that will help you solve some of the issues that, the stakeholders will have, right? And we're talking about the stakeholders in sports management here. We're really talking about the fans and the athletes and the organization itself, but, we need the fans, and trying to see how can we, address their questions, right? And address the thing that they want. Because they want it doesn't mean it's going to happen, because it may not make any sense for it to happen, right? Or it doesn't, so for instance, when there was a few complaints about baseball losing fans and it being too slow. And so Major League Baseball did some research to figure out, okay, if we speed up the game, will it have a positive impact on our fan base, right? Will more people be interested in it, okay? And then if we do speed it up, where do we speed it up at? Like in what areas? Do we put a time on the innings? Okay. Do we, have some kind of rules that say that you have a certain amount of time in the batter's box? The pitcher has to deliver the pitch within a certain amount of time. All right. A lot of this is time related. Okay. You know, is it better to, have the games at night or in the day, right? Those kind of questions people don't think about, but the timing of the sports event, when does it work best? Okay. All right. All right. So next we're going to jump into, managing participant sport across the lifespan. So really what we're looking at is, different sporting organizations and kind of like where the sports come from, sort of, what, how can we start to develop sports in the local community at the early age, and how do these particular organizations fit in, and how they trying to grow sports in America, right? Keep America physical in a sense. Okay. So some youth sport history, right? And these are all things that we're kind of familiar with, right? We have the YMCA, which is the Young Men's Christians Association, I believe. Young Women Christian Association. PAL is the Police Athletic League. People are familiar with Pop Warner football. CYO, I can't remember I think that's Canadian Youth Organization, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. But these are all organizations that specifically deal with youth sports, right? In trying to cultivate sports in the youth at a young age, right? For a number of different reasons. One is to, first and foremost, keep them active, keep them physical, keep them, engaged, right? Secondly is to, help them hone their skills if they're really good at something, right? And to kind of see and assess which athletes may have a likelihood or propensity for a certain sport, right? And maybe they can actually make a living off their particular sport that they participate in. But a lot of it, when it comes to youth sports, to keep them involved, to keep them engaged, to them help them to understand, teamwork, and being dependent on someone else and other people relying on you, and it's not just about you as an individual, but it's about the greater good of the team, and that with teamwork things can get done. Okay, so youth sport is very complicated now. It used to be a lot simpler when I was growing up, right? Because I participated in PAL. I go to the YMCA once in a while. We didn't really have one growing up in Brooklyn that I would go to, right? But I played youth sports, specifically basketball. Okay. And it helped me a lot. It helped me, learn about team play. It helped me to learn to be about being responsible. It helped me about, setting goals and working hard to get to those goals, right? And working on my deficiencies, and then be able to take constructive criticism and not, be mad about it, right? Helped me to build lots of great friendships, and people that I still talk to this day that are my friends. And so it helped me in different ways, right? And it also helped my parents, and that they had some place that they knew that I was at, that was a positive outlet, right? And I wasn't necessarily in the streets running around doing things I shouldn't be doing, right? But nowadays, it still does that, but it's more business in sports now, in youth sports, right? These kids are getting, recruited at fourth and fifth grade, and they show any potential, any, signs of really elite talent, right? The pressure and the stress is different, right? It's exponential to what it was before, right? All right. So when we look at, sports use questions, right? We're looking at really try, should the focus be on education and lead sports development? So as I mentioned last week, we're one of the few countries that combine both things, okay? Education and sports. When you go to high school, you go to college, you play sports, you do it in the context of your particular high school. You don't play for your high school team, right? But in order to play, you have to maintain a certain, academic standing. Okay. Same thing in college. You have to, get into school, and then you have to maintain a certain academic standing. So we try to put the two together because we understand sports is more fun and more enjoyable. Excuse me. And so if you want to play sports, we also want you to not rely on the sport as your main source of making a living, because most people cannot, uh, make a living off playing sports. We're just not that good. No one wants to watch 99% of us play sports. Okay. We do it for fun. We enjoy it. Now, not to say you're not good at it. You are good at it, but are you good enough for someone to pay you for it is the question. Okay. And so there's a conversation about, should the focus be on education like it is in other countries where school is school, and then after school you play your sports club, and the two have nothing to do with each other. You can be failing in school but still playing your sports club, right? Still playing your team or your whatever sport you're in. Okay, so countries have it separated. Okay, and so what they get is a much more dedicated athlete, because that athlete can solely focus on the sport, right? And not have to worry about whether or not school is going to have an impact on whether or not they play. Okay, who should govern youth sports is a very interesting question, because you want to make sure that people that are managing and taking care of youth sports are good, ethical, moral folks, right? And moral and ethics, vary from culture to culture, right? But at the end of the day, we want to protect the youth. We want them to be in a safe environment where they won't be harmed physically, emotionally, psychologically, right? We want to make sure that they're okay. So who should really manage the sports, programs for our society, right? Should be at the federal level, should be at the, state level, should it be at the city level, should be the local level, okay? And I think that, figuring out where sports should be, is, a question that really relies upon a lot of things, right? The resources available, if you're talking about at the community or local level, okay? How good is the athlete in certain, what's the purpose of the youth sports, right? And when you're 4 or 5 and you play in the basketball league or the Pee Wee, Pop One, or you play in, I didn't say Pop One, the Pee Wee. If you play it, whatever you're playing, but at 4 and 5, it's not that serious, okay? And so we're not going to invest a bunch of money and time into trying to, build this elaborate sports program for 4 and 5-year-olds, okay? But as you get older, it starts to become different, right? Less parent involvement as far as like, transportation and coordination. Now it's more on, the athlete to kind of figure out when to get to practice, go to practice, play, whether or not they want to play the game. So there's a couple different things in there, right? But who should manage that? Who should govern youth sports, is a critical question, but it really is one that relies on different factors. And who has access to very kinds of sports opportunity, right? Again, depending on where you're at, your socioeconomic status, right? There's certain sports that are going to be out of your, your scope, out of your reach, right? This is why it's, you see football and basketball being extreme, prevalent in the poorer communities, because I don't need a football and or a basketball to play the sport. I don't need any other real equipment. Okay, as long as there's a basketball court with 2 hoops, and I can make hoops out of anything. I can make hoops out of old milk crates. I can make hoops out of an old tire. I can make a basketball rim or hoop out of anything. Okay, and get it hung up on a fence, on a wall, on a garage door. Portable one, whatever the case may be, right? The city builds parks, so it's easy to play basketball and it's inexpensive, right? Aside from just needing the proper shoes to play in, and that could be anything, any shoes really. And someone could play in any type of shoes they want to play, right? And we have a basketball. As long as we have one basketball and the requisite amount of players, we can play. And you don't really need players; you can do it by yourself, right? And so when you have these sports that have a low entry, a low barrier to entry, then you'll find that it's more prevalent in the poor communities. When the communities that have more resources and more money, you'll find that the sports are a little bit more expensive, right? Golf, right? Tennis, uh, equestrian activities, even hockey, to a certain degree. They're very expensive sports. Lacrosse, these are expensive sports that, soccer, or football, I should say, right? They're expensive sports to play, especially golf and tennis, right? The equipment, just to get on the green, to play, membership fees. Just hockey's expensive. Golf is expensive to play and to participate in. So you have to have some access to the resources in order to, be involved in these sports, right? And so should we not have a golf, tennis, lacrosse team that is sponsored by the city or the local government to expose and introduce the sport to, people that can't afford to play it, right, on their own, right? We should. And so that is kind of, where we look at, trying to figure out, what sports are involved within, the community, right? And so within our society, right? And so when we look at how sports, excuse me, is kind of put together, right? We look at, the community, right? That's us going out to the parks, okay, and playing and having access to the public courts and that kind of thing, right? People, when they go to school, they participate in their school teams, right? The high school football team, the middle school football team, or the college basketball team, or soccer or baseball, whatever the case may be. All right. And then you have your private, sports organizations where, you have to pay membership, or you have to, go through rigorous tryouts, and then you become part of the club, club team member, whatever the case may be. Right. But you have a lot of, private clubs where, athletes go in and they have to, become a member via tryout, or they have to pay a membership or something to that effect, and they can participate in the sport, right? So we have it all levels, right? And as you can see, as you start to get more elite, things start to become more expensive. It start to become more private, because now we start to focus on more of the skill set and seeing if the person can actually, excel, and are they really good? Okay. All right. So we have recreation and competitive sports, and then we have youth and adult sports also. Okay. So recreational, just that we just do it for fun. If you're gonna go play pickup basketball, that's recreational on a Sunday or Saturday. Every Sunday morning, I play with a group of guys. We play early, like at 7, because most of the guys we're playing with are they're older, but they have families and they go to church and that kind of thing. So getting it done early on a Sunday morning works with our schedule, and then we start at 7, we're done by 8:39, and then have a full day ahead of us that we've gotten our exercise in, we've gotten a chance to, hang out with our friends and we got a chance to compete and, continue to play the games that we love to play, and hopefully don't hurt ourselves in the process, right? But then you have your competitive sports where, it's more structured. There's a referee. There's, uniforms for each particular team. There's things that go into place as far as transportation and the logistics of it all. And, there's a little bit more work that goes into it, but there's a championship, there's playoffs. It's more in depth, right? It's a little more see, we got practice, right? That goes with that, right? So gotta have to look at that. And then within that, we have youth and adults. Okay, we have a youth recreational competitive sports. We have adult recreation competitive sport, right? And you can find recreational and competitive sports on both sides at any age group. Okay, so it doesn't matter how old you are. There's always some competitive organization for your particular sport. Okay, so for instance, like myself, I play basketball, but I normally would play in the 40 and over league, right? Not to say that I can't play with the younger guys, and I do when I play recreationally, because I can't control that. But physically speaking, the younger guys are faster, quicker, more athletic than me. And so that's kind of a disadvantage because all those things matter in sports. So I will play in the 40 and over league competitively, right? Because those guys are more along my age and the physical aspect of it are pretty level, right? We're at this particular age at 40 or 50, we're kind of the same physically, right? We've got a little wear and tear and a few things that hurt. We're not as fast, so we don't jump as high as we used to, so it's pretty fair across the board. Okay. All right. So as I talked before or spoke before, some of these sports organizations that we have in the United States, okay, AAU, Amateur Athletic Union, right, is a big one. That's probably the most prolific, sports organization we have in the United States. So AAU gets into more of the competitive, sports, but at the amateur level. Okay. And the Boys and Girls Club of America, where again we have some competitive aspects to it, but really the Boys and Girls Clubs there to facilitate recreational sports and a place where kids can go be active in sports and other things, and to kind of keep them off the streets and getting into different things that are not necessarily good. National Alliance for Youth Sports. I'm not familiar with this organization, but I have heard of them. But as far as I know, their job is really to do the same things as all the other organizations, to foster and promote youth sports and make sure that policies and procedures are in place that will will grow youth sports and be an advocate for youth sports. Okay. Police Athletic League is just that. It's a league that was once was organized and founded by policemen, and their whole purpose was to create athletic leagues that would help kids, participate in sports and keep them off the streets, keep them out of crime, right? And in doing so, police would have an opportunity to speak to the kids and be engaging and be part of the kids' lives, so they could see that policemen were not bad people. They were just regular people trying to just make sure that everybody was doing the right thing. And so, you had police sponsoring certain activities, right? Basketball, football, baseball. PAL is pretty big. I believe on the East Coast, I played the PAL. I've also played AAU and Boys and Girls Clubs. And so there's different, organizations out there that are kind of doing the same thing, but there's more of a purpose for the Police Athletic League, the PAL. Probably one of the oldest leagues out there for youth sports, right? And then you have the United States Youth Soccer, okay? And just an organization built on trying to make sure that there's an emphasis on, building a core of soccer players, within the youth community, right? Make sure that we start kids early within understanding soccer, playing soccer, as a pastime, and maybe some of them will go on and be, great soccer players professionally and actually, make a living off of it. Okay. All right. So now, let's look at the difference between sport for the spectator consumer, okay, and for the sport for participants, okay. When we're looking at managing the sport, right, and if I'm the sports organizer or the coordinator, right, there's a couple of things I'm trying to do, right. One, I'm trying to build my program, right, and to build my program, I need money. And so I'm going to go try to get sponsorships. I'm going to try to go talk to people and, get them to see what I'm trying to do, specifically for youth sports. And well, for other sports too in general, but I just want people to see what I'm doing, and I want them to help and to be involved, right? It's a way for them to contribute to the community, right? But first things first, I need to, have people come that want to play, right? So first thing is attracting and keeping the participants, okay? Wanting people to play, and then finding those people that can play and are good at it, and enjoy it, okay? So it's kind of like business, right? Business development. Right? I need to find new customers, right? I want to make sure to have a variety of different sports programs available to the athletes or to the people, right? I just don't want to say, okay, only thing we do here is basketball and pickleball or something, okay? You want to be able to offer a variety of sports. Any sport that someone wants to play, they can play, okay? And so you want to make sure you have a lot of diversity within your sports programs, all right? The time and place of activities, that thing I'm concerned about, right? Depending again on the demographic of that I'm dealing with. If I'm dealing with youth, more likely the sporting events are going to be in the evening, on the weekends for the most part. There may be a practice here and there during the weekday, but for the most part, it's going to be stuck to the weekends. Okay, adults a little different. I'm probably going to have it more or less, practices during the day. I mean, not during the day, but during the weekday. Games during the weekday, and the weekends, nothing, because I understand that the weekends are usually allocated for the parents to take the kids to their sporting events, right? And so I'm not going to have anything really going on that during that time frame for adults. So the time and place of activities is important. Do I have the proper venue, right? Is the gym warm? Is it cold? Is there proper insulation? Do I have locker rooms? Do I have running, showers, facilities, all those things, right? Do I have, the appropriate marketing to let people know I'm out here, running these sports programs? These sports programs are available. How much is it going to cost for equipment, that kind of thing. And then, I want people in the community, regardless of whether or not they have whether or not they participate or they know someone who's participating. I just want them to come out and watch, right? I just want them to watch. So it's definitely important, right? So some of the benefits, of course, that we talked about when you talk about sports, right? It's the physical aspect of sports, right? You stay in shape, you de-stress, right? You get some of your frustrations out, right? And then you just kind of really display your physical acumen, right? Your physical abilities, right? And all that helps to kind of bring people together, okay? Kind of help people see what's out there as far as the athletes and different families, and kind of build a community around certain sports or around certain athletes, actually. All right. And to understand that support is needed across the board. If you see, a particular athlete who is talented, and you think they can make it to the next level, but you see that they are interacting at times with the wrong crowd or not doing the right thing, you as a community member maybe could go talk to them and just say, hey, you know what? I saw your game last week. You did really well. You got a lot of talent, a lot of potential. You probably want to focus on, your books and just be in the gym and working on your craft, and not necessarily out here on the streets or, not doing anything, just hanging out with your friends, not doing anything. There's nothing wrong with hanging out with your friends, but make it productive, make it a constructive, time use of your time. Okay. The quality of life, family life, sense of community, social capital, all those things are wrapped up into, when you participate in sports. Okay. Because people get really prideful about their sports teams. People, get attached. They get very supportive. They get very defensive. They're very loyal. Okay. And so all those things go into, creating a sense of commonality, right? Consensus. We all have the same goal. We all cheering for the same team or for the same person. And so that brings us together. And whatever differences we may have had, we're going to put that to the side. Okay. And we're going to support our team. We're going to support our people. We're going to support this sport. We're going to support our community. Okay. All right. So when you talk about the size and scope of community sports, right, it's really hard to tell how many people are really active in recreation and competitive sports, right? For the most part, a large swath of our population is involved in some sporting activity throughout their life, right? And as you get older, some folks kind of, do less and less, right? As far as physical activity and sports in general, okay? But the youth are typically, very well, well into your 30s and 40s, 30s for sure, and up to 40s. That's kind of where people start to fall off as far as their physical activities and their participation in sports, okay? But it's very difficult to estimate that because, people going for a walk is participating in some kind of recreational sport, right? Because there's power walking, there's different, so there's different aspects. And just because you go on a walk, is that not some physical, activity? And so does that count as a sport? Sure. Now, is someone reporting that? No, of course not. No one's reporting when they go for walks. No one's reporting when they go out for a run, right? No one's saying anything if I'm going to the gym to lift weights, I'm going to get a session in. Or I'm just going to the gym to put up shots, or I'm working on my routes, or I'm in, working on my throwing or my kicking, whatever the case may be, right? No one's tracking those things per se, but it's fair to say that a large number of people participate in sports. All right. So just some quick statistics here, okay? The sports participating rates in the US, fitness sports, 67.3%, and we're followed by outdoor sports, 50.7%. And then that's followed by individual sports at 45%, right? And so as you can see, like a lot of people are involved in fitness sports, just sports that, help to maintain your health and physique, right? We're talking about powerlifting or, CrossFit, those kind of things, right? That could be counted as an individual sport too also, right? But individual sport, we're talking about tennis, golf, those things that there's no team per se, okay? Outdoor sports, a lot of people are involved in outdoor sports, cycling, running, what else is out there? Tennis, sometimes outdoor sports, pickleball, lacrosse, soccer, these are all outdoor sports, but team sports as well, okay? All right, so let's look at different types of community sports organization, right? So, Canadian sports organizations, right, they do a very good job in offering resources through the local and regional governments, okay? And that they don't necessarily, push through the private entities or totally, absolutely funding professional level sports, okay? They are more grassroots in their efforts, and they let the local, community figure out where they want to put their money at as far as the sports go, right? And so for Canada, their big sports are, of course, hockey, okay? Basketball is a close second, I believe. and they also have football, which they play also, right? But Canada has a different approach to how they do sports. Um, they do have sports clubs, and not necessarily, tying sports and school together. Okay. The U.S. sports organizations are a little different, right? We do it through public, nonprofit, and commercial, right? And saying that, we do it in the high schools, but we also have organizations that, will do it, through their company, right? Like PAL, all right, or AAU. Okay, those are nonprofit organizations. Then you have commercial spaces that will, also facilitate sports. Okay, big professional sports teams, or just local teams, adult competitive teams, right? That are maybe semi-pro in nature, right? Not just all they're professional, but not at the highest levels. But they're offered through, private entities. Through, the pay is different, and the compensation is different. Okay. All right. Some management challenges you're going to have, of course, the government's community sports. It's really hard to get everyone to agree on how to implement sports and what sports should be funded, because each sport comes with its own requirements. And so how do we, kind of meet everybody's demands or everybody's desires? Okay. You need to have, different structures and, resources in place for each sport, as I mentioned before. All right. You can play football on any field, but do you want to do that? Do you want to have a designated football field where people can play at, right? Instead of them just playing on any lawn or any grass that they find, right? Soccer is the same thing, right? Basketball need to have access to rims, to basketball hoops, right? And so in most parks, if not all parks, there's always at least a half court or one rim, right? One hoop that you could play in, right? And then we have indoor and outdoor facilities, right? That are, available. If you want to, pay for a membership to 24-hour LA Fitness, you have access to an indoor court. If you want to be part of, the community center, you have access to indoor court, but there's also an outdoor court, right? For free, you go just in any park and play. The thing is, you have to think about, that some of the things that go with that, right? Like, for instance, now it's raining outside. You don't necessarily want to be like playing basketball outside, okay? The weather's not conducive for that, okay? Now, don't get me wrong. When I was growing up, snow, ice, whatever the case may be, I'd be outside, with my shovel, whatever, breaking the ice, moving the snow off of the court so I could, play, so I could practice whatever I was doing. So again, depending on level of commitment and, your environment, there's certain things you got to do, right? But there was also a gym I could go, indoor gym I could go to, but I only went there because I was playing on an organized, a competitive team, right? So I had access to the gym, but I was playing on a competitive team, and I only had access when we had practice and those kind of things. Now there were different areas or different community centers that had indoor courts, but for the most part, depending on where you grow up, they will determine where you play in many instances, right? And so, for the most part, when we look at community sports, a lot of participating outdoors. Okay, so the HR of sports management, all right, you got planning, recruiting and selecting volunteers, and training and development. Right, it's not any different than a company. Okay, you got a plan, all right, when the games are, how to move the athletes, the facilities, the rent, everything that goes with, regular business goes with managing sports businesses. There's no difference, right? Maybe even more so, because now you have to worry about two different things. Well, you do have to worry about two different things in business also, but the demands and the results are immediate when it comes to sport, right? If you understand what I mean, right? You're going to find out at that moment, what the outcome is. You're going to want a hot dog right then and there, right? You're going to eat it. You're going to consume it at that moment. You're going to be in the moment and experience and have a lived moment or lived experience. And so what goes into that, right? What kind of plan do I need to do? Recruiting and selecting people that are appropriate and want to volunteer, right? And how many volunteers do I need as compared to how many paid people do I need, right? There's certain positions I have to have for continuity. So I have to pay those folks some sort of compensation, okay? Because that's probably there are probably one or two positions that you need to have to keep the programs going when they're off season, when they're in a lull. You don't need to have a full staff in many cases, right? And so when the sports become when the season comes up, then you can get your volunteers to kind of bolster the staff, right? But your athletic director, your program managers, you may have one or two of those guys that you pay that will manage the programs for you and make sure everything is good to go and in place, right? Then you have your training and development, of course, right? And that goes across the board. Training development of the staff and the people involved, and training development of the athletes themselves and what they can do. All right, we talk about adult sports offering. There's different. There's classes, there's leagues and there's tournaments, right? It gives you classes that's more recreational. You go in and you just, take the class, and usually it's just to, stay in shape or to, stay active. Okay. If you're a little more serious about it and you want to do it at a higher level, you join a league, right? And those leagues will have probably more talented people that are really good at the particular sport and more serious about it. Okay, and so they want to have more of a competitive environment, so you'll join a league. Okay, and then you have your tournaments. All right, and tournaments are just the sort of a sporting event happening over a certain period of time, right? And so we have a tournament, a basketball tournament. It's a 2-day tournament. There's 20 teams, and we're playing. Not we're not playing one and done, right? Playing best record, or we're playing brackets or something to that effect, right? Where your record counts, or if you win, you move on. If you lose, you go to losers bracket, and you kind of have to fight your way out of that particular bracket, right? But tournaments, are just organized form of sports over days and weeks. Okay. All right. Youth sports offering, same thing. We have, classes, we have leagues, we have tournaments, and all those other kind of things for children, for youth, and after school programs, especially, those are important, and you'll see more of those when it comes to the youth, right? Something for them to do after class, right? It, in order to, one, help them get some physical activity, two, help them participate in the sport that they might be good at, three, helps them keep them off the street and involved in other things, right? And serve as an outlet for stress. And four, it helps with, daycare with parents, right? So parents are still at work when children get out of school, and instead of going home or instead of having nothing to do, they are involved in after school programs, right? And so they're there till the parents are available already, or can pick them up. Okay. All right. So at this point, this ends this week's presentation. All right. Make sure just go over it yourself a little bit. Right. Chapters 6 and 7. Make sure you turn in your work for this upcoming week. Don't forget to form your groups, okay, and get that email to me as soon as possible, okay? And again, if you have any questions or anything, just make sure you reach out to me, all right? All right, have a good week.